Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks, we come together, we discuss an anime that we've watched recently. We discuss it like we're a book club. Then we turn it over to our comment section and let you continue that discussion based on the ideas that we have begun with, either right or wrong. That's the premise of the podcast. We watched a mature... Again, I think we've watched a couple mature animes now in a row, so this is definitely a higher rated and not for kids. But and now we're going to discuss it. Lots of interesting ideas in it. To discuss it, I need the help of my co-host. First off, we have the law to my order, Jeremy. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Boom, boom. Oh man, I really wonder what you're going to be now. This is going to be interesting. I'm doing pretty good. Just been very busy.
Something terrible.
Sorry, always. The only interesting thing, because it's just been school and work, but the only interesting thing that I got to do was I got Kingdom Come Deliverance, the game, for free on Epic a while back, and I had a couple hours, so I was like, hey, let's play this.
How is
that game? Oh, it's really interesting, but it really tries hard to make you feel like you're really there, far better than Skyrim, like with the combat system and stuff. But it's hard. It's really hard. Like, you have to drink Savior Schnapps, which is a type of alcohol, to save. And if you don't have it, the only way you can save is by quitting. So it kind of has this implicit Iron Man mode that you don't have a choice. There's no difficulty levers. And combat is sort of... It's contingent not just on your ability to, attack from the correct direction, because where your mouse is in relation to your enemy decides what kind of attack you're going to do and where you're going to hit them in the body. And even if which mouse button you press helps. So it's not just that, though. Like, your character's level in whatever weapon you're using actually determines how well the enemy is going to have a chance at blocking you. And so you might be really good at the game and you think, oh man, I've learned this combat. You start as a level 1 version of this character and you're still going to get your butt whooped in every battle. And I didn't realize this. And so I kind of got really frustrated by the time I got to the first real boss, because I fought him like 30 times and I could not touch him. Yeah. And the whole reason was because I got there too early. I didn't do enough side stuff. I didn't grind the characters' levels up, and yeah, so it's hard, but it was really cool.
Sounds like a game perfect for you.
Yeah. I after that battle, I got really frustrated, so I uninstalled it. So it's gonna be a while until the rage quit wears off.
That does seem like a game for you.
Yeah.
All right. We also have the special victims to my unit, Jason.
See, I told you it was going to involve some sort of general joke. I'm doing pretty good. I think probably besides the hype train that I've been on for the new Path of Exile League, I've been playing some more Heroes of the Storm with Troy, and I forgot just how lovely people over the internet, especially in small community games, can be. In fact, I believe you got reported tonight, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes.
In the fun, no stress mode, play new characters, learn them, and we lost, so I got reported for not winning.
Yeah. The ultimate crime.
My favorite report of last week was we did win, and you had top damage, but apparently you didn't know how to play the character you were playing.
Good times. Good job, internet. You are great people.
Yes, thank you.
Relax a little bit. Deep breaths. It's a dead game anyway. What are you so worried about?
Yep.
All right, and my name is Troy. I'm super excited about Castlevania Season 3, but I haven't started it. I guess the only thing I've really done is played the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo. It is pretty as heck. I love the movie Advent Children, which was the sequel to Final Fantasy VII, and
So
it looks like that movie, but you're playing it, and the combat's a little different. The only thing I'm really worried about is there won't be grinding. That I can't just like walk around and get battles because you see the enemies in front of you, and then you attack them. So that'd be the only thing I'd really miss. I like the active battle systems, running around slashing. It's very similar to like Kingdom Hearts or even Crisis Core for PSP. But we'll see. I enjoyed playing the demo, and I got to show my 5-year-old son the demo, and then be like, I was like 12 when I played this. When I fell in love with Cloud and Tifa, and yeah.
How is the materia system?
It's not in the demo. But
Really?
from what I understand, there is equipment and there is materia, and you can actually see the materia on the weapon, and there's different weapons that
That's awesome.
You change the sword, it changes, and you can see the materia on it. That's what I've heard. I have not seen it, or it wasn't. There literally was no leveling up or anything in the game. You did level up, but you didn't get to touch anything. It was really just the combat. All right, let's go on to talk about the anime that we watched. Now, when I introduced this, I thought it was just a mystery, and it's definitely more of a mature thriller, like Seven or. So if you're the kind of person who can watch, Brad Pitt ask what's in the box, then this is an anime for you. If that's not age appropriate for you, then you probably should not watch this. So, letting you know that.
What's in the box?
Let's go to our non-spoiler reviews for those who want to decide if they do want to watch it. Now that I've kind of let you know what you're walking into, because we did not know.
Oh no!
All right, Jason, what'd you think?
Yeah, so the end of episode 1, I texted you and I was like, this anime is not messing around. Yeah, out the gate, the writing's so well done. You kind of get attached to some of these characters because some of them are a little tropey, and it feels very comfortable to get to know these characters, and then this show rips them from you. But yeah, I enjoyed the ride. There were lots of things that I didn't like personally, but it made for I can't say enjoyable, but I really like this anime because it just makes you question your own assumptions about reality. Because this is there's very few fantastical elements about this particular anime. And yeah, it whether it reinforces what you believe or makes you question what you believe, which I think for most people is just going to reinforce some ideas that social norms kind of keep. But yeah, the thriller part, yeah. This is one of those animes I really like that I have a hard time recommending. There we
go. All right, Jeremy, how about you?
It was okay. There were definitely parts where I would have been happy to just stop watching, but having by necessity completed it, it was okay, and it certainly, I wasn't sure where it was going to go, which, considering what it was trying to do, that's a good thing. For it to be too predictable would have completely undermined the show. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
I have been so torn the past couple days since I finished this, trying to decide if I want to say it's good or bad. It has captivated my mind. It's given me nightmares.
Wow.
It starts off really dry and dense. The reason I came up with that Law and Order joke at the beginning, because I was like, this is literally like watching a Dick Wolf procedural. It's really so much exposition about government. I'm like, oh man, okay, everyone's gonna be so mad at me for this.
I walk in and we're gonna do pharmaceutical investigation.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought it was what it was about.
I was so bored at first.
Yes, and then it goes into much more. If you're from the '90s, these movies were very big, like The Bone Collector, Seven, Kiss the Girls. like, thriller, killer stuff. And that was really good. And then in the third act, it takes a completely different twist and goes into more political and philosophical looks. I would say if any of that sounds like your thing, watch it. I will decide later what I thought after I talk it out with these guys. All right. The intro and the outro. What'd you guys think?
They were okay.
There's two outros. It does
Yeah.
switch.
I didn't find myself wanting to rewatch any of them, but I didn't hate them. So
I was actually really happy at how short the intro was. Like it was just like what 20 seconds, 15 seconds most of the time, which was really nice. That was really refreshing. And I also liked how bare bones it was. It didn't betray any of the story beats. It betrayed the ambience, but not really the story beats, which was also nice. The endings, I did notice that they were different, but I can't say I ever actually watched the whole outro of either time.
Third one in a row that we watched on Amazon Prime now. So again, the outro was really hard for me to catch. The intro, I mean, there's no song that I enjoyed or anything like that, but the ambience was cool. The imagery was really cool. I like how it changed in the third act. There is a whisper at the end of it
Right.
that, based on what you learn about certain characters in this anime, freaked me out every time I heard it. Like, no, 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 no. And I believe if I read that she says, "Are you ready for the message?" And that's all it says.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I'm not.
Let's we're now going to go into the spoiler section. So this is a bit of a mystery. There's a little bit of mystery to it, so there's gonna be a lot of spoiler there. So please be warned. And now that I've dropped the spoiler warning, there is one more thing I want to add. And I already talked about the other host with this. There's a lot of philosophy in this anime. There is talk about suicide, and there's talk about good and evil, and there's no reason we can't comment on whether we agreed with it or not, or disagreed with it. That's absolutely fine. And even how we think the anime presented it. We're not going to actually go into full philosophical debates. I know Jason and Jeremy kind of want to, so there might be a little bit of it there.
Come on, man.
But we are not a philosophy podcast. We're an anime podcast. So everything will be in the scope of the anime, just to let you know. And everyone's welcome to their own opinions. That has always been our stance on the show, no matter where your leanings are. It does not matter. So it's fine. Okay? Just don't be angry if you disagree with us. It's just literally our own opinion.
We'll probably disagree with each other.
This is one of the most hot topic things we've ever touched, and so I'm a little edgy about it, but we're fine.
Yeah, who
These
picked
are-
this again?
Yeah.
It was a different flavor than something we've ever had. And
It's really funny. Out of the three of us, the least confrontational person picked one of the most
I know.
controversial anime we've had in a long time.
let's not forget I picked Robot Grandpa anime.
Oh,
Oh.
that's true.
Crap,
yeah.
you're right.
So yeah, I do
2
this
for 2.
quite often. Okay.
Oh, yeah, and Kisniver.
Oh, God.
Man, people should take a shot every time you make a kiss episode. All right, let's go into the story. It takes place in a fictional city, and it's funny because the show starts and it's like the names are fictional, the places are fictional, and the laws are fictional. I'm like, what kind of show has fictional laws? Like, that's going to be weird. Whoever has to say that?
That's a disclaimer.
Yeah, that's apparently this one. So it takes place in the city of Shiniki, which is basically Tokyo 2. Tokyo, it's to help with Tokyo's growth. And we're going to find out more about it, and we'll talk about more about it when we get to it in the plot. But that's just the framework of this anime. And we start with some investigators for the government, for the city. They're not cops, but they do investigating. And their main character is Zen Saizaki. And he comes in to basically do an audit on this pharmacy that they got anonymous tips, or it's not anonymous, they knew where it came
So
from.
they are a government agency, though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They have warrants, they can arrest people.
Special investigation.
But they are not police officers because there are later police officers.
I would like to say, just as a guess, that they're something like the equivalent of like IRS or CIA or something like that. But I don't know for sure.
So what did we think of our main character, Zen Saizaki?
I really enjoyed his performance in this entire anime because he tries to embody this ideal of justice that he doesn't even quite understand, but he knows in his heart of hearts is an intrinsic part of his being, right? He knows he needs to fight for it, but he's still unsure how to define it. And I find that be a fascinating character. Like, I can't even really call it a flaw, but it basically is a character flaw where he doesn't even know what he's fighting for, but he knows he needs to fight for it. He's a very stalwart individual. He loves his family. He loves the people around him. Or at least, he forms very good bonds with people. And it's funny because as a vehicle for a point of view for the show, just about every action he did, I'm going, man, I could see myself making that same action. And he was a great vehicle for the audience.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that they actually named him after the quality that he's supposed to embody so well.
Yeah, no anime's ever done
that. I know. But in this one, it kind of seemed to be so much more important because he was the antithesis kind of for another character that we meet later. Even though her name doesn't mean what I thought it was going to mean. But yeah, he was a great character. He was basically put through hell, and you could feel it every step of the way. He did a really good job.
At first, I found him a little bland, but I actually enjoyed that. I like that they're like, he's already married with a kid, and so there's like no romantic entanglements involved in this story. And that was kind of refreshing, that there was just, hey, it's not hot young bachelor. It's like, I'm just a office worker. I just do my job. I want to get justice. I want to spend time with my wife and kid. I'm just a regular guy. And then he's thrust into this unworldly situation that's way beyond anything he's capable of handling, but he's so determined in his pursuit of justice that he's going headfirst into it. And I really like that. I also really like, as much as they play with themes and we'll be talking about good and evil and stuff, a thing that I kept noticing with him, especially in the beginning, is that he's like, I'm going to do a bad thing for the good reason. I'm going to work with a reporter, even though that's against the rules. I'm going to access these files, even though I'm not supposed to. He's constantly doing bad things for good reasons, and that kind of, I think, adds to the layer of the good and evil philosophical talk that's going to come later. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated that. I only think at the end they kind of dropped the ball with that a little bit more than I thought they should. They didn't really bring it back into it.
Did either of you guys think he was not the main character in the first episode?
No, because of his outline in the intro.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't actually pay attention in the intro of the first episode. I thought that Kujin was going to be the main character, and just the way that they portrayed Zen, he came across as like just the bland boss that was there for the backdrop. And I thought that was really cool because it caught me by surprise when he became the main character.
Can we mention just real quick how unrealistic his wife is?
In what way?
In Japan, I don't think she is.
Where he spends nearly a year away from her, and then she's just like, "Oh, it's nice to see you. You do your own thing. It's fine. I've got the kid." Whose marriage is like that?
Maybe not here. I don't know if that's a cultural thing.
Dude, I'm gone for 10 minutes and I'm getting yelled at.
Okay, so honestly, I obviously don't know Japanese culture outside of anime, but I do see this in anime a lot, where like the husband is a working husband and hardly spends time at home, but the wife's like, that's what I signed up for. Even when it comes to like shonen, like Naruto, Sasuke is gone for like 5 years, and his wife's like, but it's Sasuke. He's got to go hero stuff. So
that's exactly what she said.
All right. So moving forward, there is also his assistant investigator Fumio, who we would talk about. if he was going to be spending a lot of time with us.
Yeah.
And
Spoiler
Fumio,
alert.
that's who it was. I thought was the main character, not Kujin. Sorry, wrong name.
we do meet Kujin in this episode too. The only thing I'll say about both Fumio and other characters that are going to show up, they are presented as this is going to be a character around, fully developed, fully, hey, notice this character, it's got a name, they've got a special design, and then
he's good at this, he's not good at that, he's he's really shown himself, like, and this character specifically is someone I would see in just about any other cop anime, whether it was Lucky Go, whatever anime, to something a little harder, because he's got that plucky attitude, he's got the go get him underdog kind of feel to him, and I really liked him at first.
Yeah, he has the protagonist vibe.
Yes,
that's what he has. Yeah.
He's also like, oh, do we have to go through all these documents? Because after they raid the pharmaceutical place, they bring back these boxes of documents, and the job is just going through page by page, looking for anything that would be constituting a crime. They're specifically looking for payoffs to a college to fake drug tests. And they come across a paper on a drug, and there's a stain on it, and they realize it's blood, and they actually pull the paper, split it apart, and inside is
two pieces of paper stuck together, right?
Right. Unless they have like real thick paper there. But the inside is covered in flesh and blood, and hair, and the letter F's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the significance of F was.
They say it.
They say it.
Oh.
It's female.
Yeah.
That's right.
Which
makes a lot of sense, man.
Yeah.
My thing is like, how does that help? Like, what are you? Why don't you write more letters?
Well, but also F is an English letter for the word female in English, but this was supposed to come from a Japanese corporation. That's another thing that's confusing to me. I don't know. That's weird.
Anyway, so they decide to go investigate the doctor who wrote the report. They go to his apartment, and when they get a warrant and go inside, he's dead. He has committed suicide, is what it's ruled, and he is hooked up to an anesthesia machine that would kill him slowly, but very peacefully over a long period of time. And this kind of starts the investigation. This is when they bring in his police officer friend, whose name is Kujin. He's like a real slick dude, but he's just happy to help. He's not trying to like, oh, this is gonna be my case or anything. He's like, okay, here's what I got. Let's work together. What did you guys think of Kujin? Because he kind of becomes a major player.
I really liked him too.
Don't say it like that.
Yeah, he's not exactly happy-go-lucky, but he's definitely he's got the laid-back attitude. He's got the let's get this done. Almost like a surfer dude that decided that it was time to kind of straighten up and go to corporate world. But yeah, he's fantastic. And also his relationship with Zen is really good too.
One thing I say is I'm skipping over, like we said, there's a lot of talking in these episodes and explaining things, and I'm skipping over most of that. But
that's the cool thing about this anime, is gripping as it was, there was very little action and very little on-screen violence.
Even the most horrific violent thing, like they never actually show what happened. It's heavily implied, and you definitely feel it emotionally, but it's not.
Well, and they say, yeah, she was killed.
When they do further investigating, there is video of two people that were visiting this doctor, and one is a woman they can't ID, and the other is a man named Ano, who is a secretary for a person running for mayor of the city because there's an election coming up. And the man is the mayor candidate. His name is Nomaru, and he will be important later, but not enough to really discuss him. He's just typical old, fat, seedy politician. when they investigate this Ano guy, they follow him and find him picking up a prostitute and taking the prostitute to some building contractors, and basically the implication is they're using sex to buy votes for the election. And so they Fumio and Zen split up. Zen goes after Ano, and Fumio follows the prostitute. And they're texting each other and like, okay, good job, this is what we learned. And then he gets one last text from Fumio and rushes to Fumio's house, and he goes into Fumio's apartment, and he's hanging by his neck. He has hung himself. And we see that the text he sent was like, thank you for everything. It was a suicide note. And this is how the first episode ends, with this, what we thought was another main character, just gone.
Yep.
Like, you could mistake him for the main character with
kind
of the tropes that they throw at you as far as anime.
Yep.
The next episode, his partner's buried, and he's very upset, and he's like, no, there's no way this was suicide. He would never commit suicide. So I know he was killed because of our investigations, and he wants to keep digging in. And his boss is like, all right. And then we get a kind of a mixed up timeline in this episode, because there's one where he's interviewing a woman, and then there's the events that led up to taking that woman into custody. So I'm gonna do the taking the woman into custody, and then jump to the interrogation. Even though throughout this episode they're interspliced as we learn the details. But basically, he has a reporter friend that he's not supposed to work with, but he does to get additional access.
Because reporters and officers of the government are not supposed to talk.
Right.
About open projects or open investigations.
Right.
But he's like, but we're best friends. But and I didn't bring up the reporter because he doesn't play a huge part in the story. I was a little confused when they introduced him because he seemed to play the exact same role as Kujin. I need an outside guy to go ask favors of, and I'm like, why two? Why do we need two of the same character?
Do something to one of them.
But then the third one
isn't used. Yeah.
Back. Yeah. I thought it was more red shirts, but even that didn't end up being true. And anyway, the reporter ends up, after doing his own investigation, takes him to a country club, and they find out that the apartment of the prostitute is actually paid for by a different candidate, not the candidate who Ano was working for. And it's not Naomaru, it's actually this other guy. So now they're really confused. Okay, why are the candidates helping each other buy votes? And at the same time, Kujin gets to the same place. He's like, hey, I followed this other guy here to this hot spring, and they realize it's another prostitute drop-off, and so they arrest that woman after that night because he's frustrated, and so he just picks her up. And her name is Emiko, and he takes her to interrogation. We are going to find out this is not Emiko. This is a woman named Ai Magasi, who is our villain. And, at first the interview is like, what happened? What can you tell me about Ano? What can you tell me about the mayor? But then it becomes very clear, like, this is our Hannibal Lecter. Like,
yes,
you get that sense so fast.
Yeah, she's playing with him.
So your guys' thoughts on Ai, the villain of our story?
As far as a villain that you would love to hate, she is fantastic. I think Jeremy said it best. I wanted to see her die.
Yes.
You want her. Yeah. This anime does, and she doesn't get a ton of screen time as far as episodes. She's usually in the background. And not like in the background of the scene, but like off screen. And she's still that big of a looming threat, which I find just fascinating. And she reminds me of Megane from Recreators, if you've seen that anime, where she's just got this twisted version of the world. But unlike Megane, she knows she's an evil person. And I love the really cool philosophical ties they draw into later that we'll get into later that I don't want to spoil now. But as far as a villain character, she's probably one of my favorite villains in quite some time. Just because of how easy it is to hate her.
Yeah, one of her big things is that she basically acknowledges that her desires are evil, but then tries to convince you that that's okay. And
It's just a different point of view.
Yeah, it's a different point of view, and you should just accept all points of view as equal. That there's no such it's no real difference. And it was absolutely fascinating to see the embodiment of a very damaging ideology, which is what she was trying to push, right? And the actions that she performed, which we'll get into later, were just so clearly, obviously detrimental to everybody else, either individually or as a group. Like nothing that she did helped or had a positive impact on everybody. And yeah, that was just fascinating. Just the parallel between a negative ideology, a damaging ideology, and her character was just really cool.
She is fascinating. The fact that through her character, there's a link between suicide and sex, and it only this whole anime is about suicide, and they bring up even in the anime that this is a very taboo subject. We don't talk about it as a world society. No one is comfortable with it, and so watching it, you already feel uncomfortable, or at least I did, because it's dealing with a taboo subject. And then her with her powers, or whatever you want to call them, she's linking it to sexuality, and it makes it even more disturbing. She is unsettling, and she lives in my brain now. I won't forget her. She has so few screen time, but it's such a big impact and so unsettling that she makes herself bigger than the world.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's really easy to say that about a character, or like have, this is how I want my character to be. But to execute it properly, because we've seen plenty of anime where it's like the villain tries to be bigger than life and they're just a joke. She doesn't have minions. She doesn't have a base of operations. She doesn't have a grandiose plan. She is just this evil incarnate running around causing chaos. And it's terrifying. And it was very unsettling to watch, and I loved every second of it.
God.
I do have theories about her. They don't really go into explanation about like how she works, but I'm fine with that. But honestly, in a horrible way, I fell in love with the character in this scene. This interview scene, they do such a great job of. He's asking her questions, trying to just get did you do prostitution? Did you have sex with these men? And she can tell he's kind of uncomfortable asking those questions and is enjoying the living heck out of it. First pretending to be innocent and naive, and then slowly reeling him in until the point where she finally says, I'll give you a confession. And this takes place over a few days because they're like keeping her to get this confession. They need this to nail this guy. And she's like, I'll just give you your confession, but you have to answer questions about me. And then she starts asking, like, what's your beliefs? What do you think about sex? What do you think about death? What do you think about good and evil? What's your name? Where do you live? And they're sitting across a long table in an interrogation room. There's a guy typing in between them, but the anime frames it so it's like she's right in his face, because what she's saying is she's invading his personal bubble, and you feel that uncomfortableness that he feels, and you feel that invasion of personal space, even though they're a room apart. It's amazing animation framework. I don't know all what to call it, but it's so good. After he gives her the information she wants, she's ready to sign the confession. He leaves to go get the confession, and when he comes back, she's gone. And the guy typing is like, I don't know. And so he runs after her. He can't find her, and he's like, what is going on with her? He then goes to his boss, and he's like, okay, boss, this didn't work out. I'm ready to present my report. I'll take responsibility for what went wrong, but I do believe we're on the right track here. And he goes in, and remember, this whole thing is I'm going to bust this Nomaru guy who's running for mayor for killing my partner, for doing all these dirty deeds. I'm going to get justice. And his boss walks him in, and then Nomaru walks in and sits at the head of the table, and he's like, what?
Yeah.
This is, I mean, we already had a big twist in episode 1. This is our second big twist, which is basically, yes, there is a
It's corrupt. There's a bunch of corrupt politicians that are like fixing votes.
right.
And,
There's a
yep.
conspiracy. You're absolutely right. There's a conspiracy, but you actually work for it. Like you're part of it. Your boss is in on it. Yeah, so you need to back off. And they explained to him at this point about the city, and so I do kind of want to ask you guys your thoughts on the city. And they basically, this new city is a law testing ground where they can, not have as many building codes, and so buildings go up faster, and not have as many drug restrictions, so that maybe they can get new drugs on the market, and just to see how that affects, and then the rest of the world can decide if they want to adopt and change their laws in accordance.
It specifically said nation building testing ground, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So any thoughts on the city itself? Because it's a very interesting concept, and I really like how it plays into the evil plans later.
I like the complexity of how, as a concept, it's interesting, but then you're going to have whoever's in power and setting it up is going to be able to manipulate its origin a little bit. And, in this case in particular, it kind of gets out of hand. Their manipulations don't work in the way that they expected them to. But it's fascinating to me when you get to see how essentially, I don't know, I enjoyed seeing how politics went south. But the city's interesting. I kind of think it's a silly idea, like if we're just talking honestly for a moment, because like how long is that going to stay secret, and how many people are actually going to live there if they know that the city's just a testing ground? And once you know, it's tainted. It's no longer a real testing ground. So I don't know. It's interesting.
They don't seem to keep a very tight lid on it, because he's running around telling, like, he basically goes to everyone. It's like, hey, just so you know, this is what the city is, and they're like, okay. And then no point is his boss is like, hey, you should not tell everyone.
Right. So like, why would you live there if they're like, yeah, this is the big experiment? And if you did live there, you'd be like, well, this is an experiment. I want this law to succeed. So even if it's not that great, I'm going to suffer through it because I want it to work. I don't know. It just seems like you're contaminating the test results.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right, because one of the things is they are very much in control of it. They basically tell them, we're picking who the mayor is. The votes don't actually matter. We've already picked the guy that the people will like, but we're in control of it as a group. This is not a guy getting put in charge. This is a whole conspiracy thing. But they do tell him, we had nothing to do with Fumio's death. Mm-hmm. That would actually just bring more suspicious on us. There's no reason we would care. We could literally just come to you and tell you to stop. So that this was not needed. So we do actually want you to investigate this death. We want you to know what's going on, because this is not part of our plan. And they tell him, you get to decide what you do next, which is basically quit or do our bidding, which is aligned with your goals right now. So he decides to stay on. And then he finds out that the new mayor, who is a young-faced guy that they picked to be the mayor, he became mayor, and then he disappears. And so Nomaru's like, help us. We gotta find the mayor. We can't control the city without him. And we actually got to meet Itsuki. There was a flashback of Zen having to meet him. So what do you guys think of him? Because he's kind of a secondary antagonist.
Yeah, he's probably one of the best slimeball politicians that I've ever seen. Drawn, acted, camera work, dialogue presented and delivered. Like, the voice actor for this particular character is fantastic, because it makes you hate this guy too. Not necessarily the virulent, like, hatred you have for Ai, but this dude is just slimy, but he feels like a clean politician that's got dirt. And even though he's supposed to be young and he doesn't have any political experience yet, you instantly know he's up to something. Even in this like seemingly innocuous scene where he's shaking Zen's hand, you're like, that guy's a bad guy.
Throughout it all, I still don't understand how he benefits with the political agenda that he has. I mean, like, I know that what we've seen is the end of this series, and unless, like you said, unless the author writes another book or something, but it's on. So I don't understand. Yeah, I was thinking that might be the case too, but even so, then I guess it's just pure chaos is all he's looking for. But yeah, he's a perfect cult leader, is what he came across to me as. He's charismatic. He's flamboyant enough. Well, not really flamboyant, but he's able to convince people. He's manipulative enough, and he's smart enough to predict what people are going to use against him. You know, he's playing several moves ahead of the other politicians in the room, and so yeah. But at the same time, like, his argument is also something that makes me dislike him, because he's trying to essentially present only he's cherry picking things in order to present it in the perfect light for his argument, and it's just so, ooh, he knows what he's doing, and oh god.
My biggest issue with him is that I don't really know if he is another victim or if he's actually a villain.
Right.
It's never made clear. He tells a story later about why he wants the suicide law to be legal, why he wants to commit suicide himself,
which I don't believe one bit. But
yeah,
go on.
but because his wife is not his wife in that scene.
Yeah.
So was that whole thing a lie? Was he? But is he being manipulated? Is he? And there's a point where they mentioned that, hey, look, that doctor that committed suicide had developed this drug that helps you commit suicide peacefully. And I was like, okay, is this going to be like an investor thing? Like, he's invested in that drug, so he's into this plan. But we never find out. And I honestly feel like he's one of the. I feel like the ending gets a little clumsy with all the threads they had, and he's one of the ones that get dropped. And that's a little bit of a disappointment.
It's almost like the anime was essentially just trying to get to a position to have this philosophical debate, and it wasn't sure how to resolve the situation, but it did manage to get to the philosophical debate, and he was just the avenue. Yeah,
and I don't hate where it went. I just feel like maybe it needed a few more episodes to tie up some more loose strings. I don't know.
Yep.
Just my thought. And then they do find out that the woman that he interrogated is also the same woman from she's at the first prostitute, and that her actual name is Ayamagasi, and she basically can shapeshift.
Yeah.
Master of disguise, or however you want to do it. But yeah, she always looks like a different woman. She does have a regular appearance that we see later, but she can appear in many different forms.
Who's the first one that brings him two different pictures of a female, and he's like, who are these women? And they're like, no, this is the same person.
I think it was Kujin, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But yeah, that's funny because this happens multiple times throughout the anime, is that someone will see this file of like 6 or 8 different pictures of different women, and they're like, no, this is the same person. They're like,
And then we find out that 64 people have lined up on this tower in the middle of the city, which is City Hall, and they're all out there. And then the mayor appears on television to everyone in the city on this group broadcast, and he says, hey, we need to advance society, and just like fire can hurt us, but we've tamed it, and by doing that, our civilization advanced. This is the next thing we're going to tame, and it's death. So from now on, suicide is legal, and then all 64 of the people jump. And it's really creepy the way they jump, because they like jump happily and are like flinging their arms out in joy as they fall to their death, including the officer that was in the interrogation room with Ai and Zen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those moments where I was like, I did not see this coming. this turn. Like he shows up on the billboard and he starts talking about suicide like this, as if it's this next great thing that's going to benefit mankind. Like it's this tool we can use if we understand and accept death. And I'm like, it's out of left field, right? Like what is this? What are we doing now? What is this anime? Extremely unsettling and just very confusing. Yeah.
So Zen is basically giving instructions like, you got to bring the mayor in. We got to capture the mayor. And he's like, yeah, but there's not a law that he's broken. They're like, well, find a law that he's broken. So he's tasked with putting together a team, and he gets a new assistant who is the daughter of the police commissioner, or the head of the police, or the niece.
I can't remember what he is, but yeah, he's something.
Niece. That's right.
Right. And her name is Hayasa Sekiro. I really like the scene where he's like, it's really weird calling you the name of like one of my authority figures. And she's like, tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's basically, I kind of was worried they would go with a love interest, especially when they said married, but they don't, but they do actually become close friends. And I really appreciated that. But what do you guys think of her character?
I really enjoyed watching her because she kind of brought a no nonsense, like, underling vibe to the story, which was kind of great. I love the scene where she's like, I really thought this was going to be like an underhanded, like we're going to do illegal things kind of thing. And, I just want to do what's right and what's just. And, I'm glad that that's not what's going on. He's like, oh no, that's exactly what we're doing. And then she's just kind of on board with it because she's seeing the good through the trees, if you will. Even though that doesn't really work in real life. You can't break laws to do good. But this is the testbed nation, right? No, but I really liked her character because she kind of mirrored Zen in the Justice Department and how they kind of had this ideal that they were always striving for.
Yeah, I totally agree. I kind of saw Zen as the more experienced paladin who is looking at things as, okay, there's the law of the land and then there's the higher law, whatever source it happens to be. Obviously for the paladin illustration, it's whatever god he happens to worship, but just a higher moral law that he's trying to figure out how to follow. And sometimes the law of the land doesn't get followed. Yeah, and that's why justice is like a key word there. And then she shows up and she's the younger, less experienced one that thinks that good is just following the laws and doesn't really see the higher moral ruler that he's using until this point, like what you brought up, Jason, where she's like, oh, okay, yeah, you say we are going to be breaking laws, we are going to be doing bad things, but I see now that there is a higher moral purpose to what we're doing. And yeah, that was a cool moment. I like this character. She was good.
Yeah, she was a really good litmus test for, are we doing good or are we being corrupt? Because she comes in fresh, naive, and hasn't started to be corrupted yet. And he can tell, like, she's judging me and I'm failing here.
Yeah.
But over time, she's like, we are serving the greater good, and I realize I can tell you're a man who wants to serve the greater good, so I'm in for wherever this goes. I do wish she wasn't in the anime, because then episode 7 couldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Itsuki, the mayor, posts another video online, which is basically, hey, I understand some of you are upset about this new suicide law, so let's do it the proper way, and let's, and I don't quite understand how this works, but they're going to vote for people to be on a, what's it called?
Parliament.
And that whatever Parliament's opinion is on this law will determine whether the suicide law goes into effect or not. So anyone can run for Parliament. They actually talk about this with the reporter. Literally, it's ageless. Anyone can run for it. There's all these, like, kids can vote in the election, which means parents can basically get double votes. There's all these really loose laws in the election.
You only have to be a citizen for a day in the city.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
If a bad guy is like, hey, let's do a thing completely by your rules, I'm in, he's already won.
Yeah.
Just lay down and let it happen at that point.
Or run.
Yeah, or cheat or something. Then they get a guy, and I believe he's from the police force, Toreo. He's this huge
big guy.
Yeah, the big guy. He joins the team, and
The director.
yeah, he's the
Right.
director, and he's in charge of actually putting the team together. And Zen asks, like, get Kujin, and then get a guy from the
Sex
the
crimes.
sex crimes unit. And so he does, and they put this team together, and they're basically, we got to find the mayor, and we have to find out what the mayor did wrong, and then we have to get those things to both work at the same time. And also, hey, you one guy whose name is Sutsu, can you go check on this woman? Go investigate this woman for me because I need to know what's going on with her. And he does, and he gets information for Zen about her past, and Zen actually gets like medical information about her and finds out that her uncle was actually her doctor at one point. And so then him and Hiyasa go to this doctor. They go to the doctor and like, hey, please tell us about this woman. And he's like, she and a couple other kids had an incident in school, and being their uncle, I was asked to be their therapist and talk to them. And I talked to every single boy, and they were suffering from anxiety, and she wasn't. And when I asked the boys what was wrong, they said she raped all of them.
Yeah, they were afraid of her.
And I'm like, and then when I asked what happened, she never touched them, and I didn't understand. And then I talked to her, and she was so seductive. And they're like, she was a 15-year-old girl. He's like, yeah, I know. It was horrible.
And your niece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and the way she gets into your mind is like, I understood what they meant. She was.
Now, audience, before you freak out, yes, she has powers. This is not just the doctor discussing a regular human being. We're basically dealing with a rogue mutant who is evil.
Yeah, this isn't, did you see the dress she was wearing? She was obviously wanting me to, no, this is nothing like that, because he admits full out, this was wrong. I did not want to do this, but once she was in my head, there was as if I was under her control.
Yeah, and, I mean, he even goes so far as to relocate and leave his practice and go to a place where nobody knows him just to get away from anything connected to her.
Right, because he says, after this, I decided she needs to go to therapy. And so I was seeing her and talking to her for 6 months, trying to help her. And then she quit, saying she didn't need it anymore. And I realized the only reason I did this was to keep seeing her. And I was so disgusted, and I was so morally evil at that point. I quit my job. I moved to somewhere where no one could find me. And I just, yeah, so that's that.
Yep.
Time to move on.
The investigators are looking into the 64 people who committed suicide, and there's almost no connection to them. And he's like, okay, but find out maybe where were they before they committed suicide. They're trying to see if the mayor ever told them to commit suicide, because that is a law. You can't
abet.
Yeah, you can't abet someone committing suicide. And so then they practice kendo, and this is where he also is like, hey, I kind of realized that you're not as evil as I thought you were, and that we're actually doing the greater good.
And also, she kicks his ass.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's a great fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And then Itsuki calls for a public debate the day before the election.
Surprise one, right?
Yeah, he's like, hey, we should really just lay this all out. Let's have a debate. And Nomaru is like, I got this. This is my arena. This is my wheelhouse. I'm going to destroy this little punk. Because they can't find the mayor, and they've only got a couple days left. They're like, okay, let's refocus on just finding the crime. We know where he's going to be now. Find a crime. Everyone, find a crime. And then they get a call from Tsutsui, but it's Ai on the phone. And she's like, hi, Zen. And she tells him about how she likes to play role-playing games and how, you have to be the hero and no one understands you. And then he hears Sui walk out into the road and commit suicide and get hit by a truck.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Which
when
was
they
just heartbreaking.
also when they investigate the body, he has a receipt in his pocket for 1X. I actually thought I read that wrong, like AX?
Yeah, I thought it was like what? Like body deodorant? Like what did you an axe?
Mm-hmm.
The day before the elections, Sasaki realizes they're not going to get this done, and he actually disbands the investigation team. And then he admits to all of them, and we find out this later. It kind of plays coy, like, "Oh, we quit," and then he went to the debate. But then it shows that his entire team's at the debate. And after he disbands them, he's like, "I'm going to go kidnap the mayor." And now that I've told all of you, you've either got to arrest me or help me. And they're like, "Okay, we're in." Even Hyasa's in. And so they're basically the security team for the event, and they're going to, after the event, just abduct the mayor and figure it out from there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The debate begins, and there's like 5 or 6 people representing different political parties for the anti-suicide, and just Itsuki for the pro-suicide. All the anti guys go, and what about the economy? What about the morality? What about going through all their points? And then Itsuki goes through and addresses each one with political. Hey, you're wrong. You're wrong. What is morality? Morality changes. What was good yesterday was not good today. And basically that's his whole argument.
His strongest one, which I'm really glad that the dialogue made it feel disingenuous, was the people should have a right to it. And I think that might have been something that the writers could have leaned on, but I'm kind of glad they didn't. Because then what's his face brings out, oh, that's right, we never talked about the kid in the mask.
Oh yeah,
that made a video.
Yes. They're basically, a kid came forward with a viral video saying, "Please don't let this law go forward. My dad wants to commit suicide. If this law happens, I'm going to lose my dad. Please don't do it."
Yeah, and so the lead politician that is against suicide brings the kid in, thinking, this is my ace up my sleeve, and presents him. But the counter argument to that turns out to be, "Oh, yeah, that's my son. I guess I won't commit suicide right now, son, but maybe I will, because in the end, it's unselfish martyrdom, but it's actually selfish because anybody else could offer." I don't know. It's just, this was fascinating.
He also says, "I want to commit suicide because my son needs a heart transplant, and I want to give him my heart, and a parent should be able to do that for a kid." And I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, I was a little worried at this point. I'm like, why are you making good points about pro-suicide? I'm assuming you're anti-suicide anime, but you're making points that I'm like, that's not a bad point.
Right.
And I was a little concerned.
Well, and I mean, there was. He goes on to say that, like, because this is on the news right now, people are going to write in and say they'll give you their heart and everything, but I won't let them, because I'll give you my heart. But then he says, "But you don't have to take my heart. Whatever you choose to do, it's okay. But I'm going to die, so you have the opportunity." And I'm like, okay, you've just undermined it. None of this makes sense now. Like,
and this is why I think he's being controlled. And this is why I think he's being controlled, because, as we'll find out later, it's this. She makes you have this desire that it's just so consuming,
seductive. Yeah,
the
seduction of the intoxication of killing yourself.
Yes, and I think that's why he undermines his own argument here, is because, yes, that's a side benefit that he recognizes. That's not his main goal.
Yeah,
and I think that's why. That's why I personally think he's being controlled.
I could totally.
She also does control people to not make them commit suicide, just to believe in the suicide blood. That actually does happen with another character.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another reason why.
I was actually surprised
that
he wanted to commit suicide. It took me by surprise.
What's that, Troy? I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was surprised that he actually wanted to commit suicide when he said, "I'm the guy who wants to commit suicide." I was like, "Oh, I thought you were in this for personal gain or being as a puppet."
Mm-hmm. I guess in that way, that does provide a suitable motivation for him to put all of his political powers to bear, and his abilities as a politician and a thinker. But yeah.
Okay, this sways the audience, especially because Nomaru had said, "I'm not going to run for parliament. The kid will, and I'm going to support him. I'll step down so you can vote for this kid." And now the kid's the son of the guy who's pro-suicide.
Yep.
This really changes the audience's reaction.
Because polling was like 3% in favor of this new suicide law, and like the vast majority of the population was against it. But like after this grandstanding with his son, it's all of a sudden now nearly 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll find out about the 50-50 in a minute, because the whole let's kidnap the mayor plan begins as he leaves the building. First off, they're like, what are we going to do about the wife and child? He's like, okay, send Kujin and another officer to escort the wife and child. Tell them we have to do this for safety. We have to separate them. And then you guys escort the mayor. And he has guards at checkpoints that check in whenever the mayor and the officers escorting the mayor pass by. And they're like, checked in. And then they're like, there's a commotion, but we're going to keep going. Check in. He's like, Kujin, what's going on? Kujin doesn't answer. The first guards, the very first guards they pass, they don't check in. Second guards
felt like aliens.
Basically, every guard they've already passed is no longer checking in. And he's in the van with Hayasa. Get in the van. And she runs out to go figure out what's happening and report back to him. And then all of a sudden, Kujin runs up to him, and he's been shot in the leg. He's like, what's happening? He's like, the wife is I. It's not really his wife. It's the woman we've been looking for. And he says, I shot myself so I could make it here. You need to run away. Don't try to stop her. Don't get involved with this anymore. You will not win. And then he explains, she's in me. She got me. I want to commit suicide so bad. I had to shoot myself in the leg just to get here and tell you this. He's like, and he starts talking about how it's like sex and the moment you're about to burst. And this is such a graphic and unsettling scene. And then he pushes himself away, falls down on his own gun, and shoots himself. Zen,
it's just the worst part about this whole scene is like they are best friends, and this whole thing happens right in front of his eyes.
It gets worse.
I'm gonna stop it right there. Yeah, we have worse stuff to get to. The one thing that was kind of holding me together with all these pro-suicide arguments is that the very character of Zen is the anti-suicide argument, showing the pain and suffering he's going through as someone who keeps on living through losing people by suicide. And I thought that was really well done.
Yes.
Even though they weren't stating very good anti-suicide reasons, they were showing it. And I was like, okay, well, at least I have that. All right.
But he's just like everyone else before him. He's got this big old smile on his face of satisfaction as he pulls the trigger. And it's so unsettling.
His description of it as he's bleeding, and it's using the blood as like an illustration too about overflowing. Man, it's graphic, but not.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Zen goes running off, can't find the guards. It starts finding dead people, and Hayasa calls him, and she's like, we're at this checkpoint. Ai is here. She's just talking with the guards. I'm hiding. I'm gonna go and attack her. He's like, no, don't. And then we see her like pick up a piece of wood to like kendo her, and that's all we see. And then he runs into the room. Everyone's dead. The big director cop guy is dead. What's funny, when you saw Ai talking to them, they're all like filling out a book report, like they're taking notes for something she's saying, like they're investigating. And he finds that notebook, and it's all suicide notes by each one of them. They were like taking turns writing their suicide notes. Yep. And then he runs out the back, and there's only one shoe from Hayasa, and she's gone. Her and I are gone. The mayor's gone. And he goes to the police And they're like, he's like, this was murder. Like, no, your entire team just committed suicide. He's like, no, that's not what happened.
This was not a group suicide.
And then he gets a message from Hayasa's phone, and it's a link to a streaming video. Clicks on it, and it's streaming. And I won't go into description. They don't actually show the graphic thing, but they do insinuate. They actually cut to his wife and child like cooking food and chopping stuff there.
Yep.
But basically, while I spouts about like you need to understand what evil is, and I'm going to help you get there. She's drawing marks on Hyasa's body, who's tied up in her underwear, bound and gagged, and then she takes the axe that was on the receipt and goes, arm, leg, arm, neck. As she's talking, and he is like staring at the video. She can't hear him, but he's like, "Please stop! I'm begging you. I'll do anything you want. Don't do this." And he watches his partner get chopped up, and then the episode ends. It's
so bad.
This episode was just about broke me. Like, wow, I hate this character so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode about the violence. It does warn you that. And I actually thought it was going to be worse because of that disclaimer. And like I said, they don't actually show parts come off or anything. It's just super implied. But my 13-year-old daughter walked into the room while this episode was on, looks at me and goes, "What are you watching?" And I said, "I don't know anymore."
Yeah, exactly. Oh.
But, it's funny because this was nearly over the top as far as like what a bad guy does to one of the good guys in an anime that I've seen. And it's interesting that you mentioned, or we talked a little bit about another anime that we watched quite a while ago, The Robot Grandpa, and how I found the murder that the bad guy did in that one so distasteful. This did such a great job with the almost showing you and then not showing you, and that almost feels worse, but wasn't nearly as distasteful. But it got the point across that this was such an evil person without needing to push it in my face. But even then, it still felt pushed in my face. But I don't know what the big difference is.
Also, how much it broke him. I think the shots of him literally breaking down and crying and powerless to stop this, but forced to watch. You can't turn it off. You can't leave your partner like that. That was really impactful.
Yeah, this ruined him mentally.
Yeah, that's why I think that she's such a potent symbol for an ideology, because her goal is to get in people's heads. It's not necessarily to do physically to them; it's to break their minds. And when their minds are broken, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more difficult. It kind of seems like she's just playing with this guy because she noticed him and decided to keep him around as a novelty, because she could have told him to kill himself at any point in time, and it seems like he would have. And yeah, I was really curious about that. Like, why did she pick him? And when she's talking about a hero, clearly she's talking about him because she knows she's evil. She can't be the hero. So she's having more fun, is what it seems like. Playing a longer game instead of just breaking him instantly the way she's breaking these other people.
You know what this
I was
reminds me
wondering
of?
though. Yeah. Well,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was wondering though. She knew that she was gonna be using the axe for this. Did she already know she was gonna use it on Hyasa, or was she picking somebody else, or like that confused me a little bit. Like, how did she know? Did she obviously planned to use it on somebody?
Huh, that's a good question.
I have theories about her, but
This, now that as we're talking about this, because one thing we didn't mention about the scene with the doctor is that she's not blood related to him; she's adopted.
yeah.
I don't know where she came from.
This is so much reminding me of Brightburn, in the fact that you've got this basically extraterrestrial humanoid looking person with superpowers that uses them for not altruistic purposes.
Yeah.
And that's what this reminds me of. This reminds me of some sort of supervillain that she found out that she could manipulate the people around her with the power of her voice, and she did not use it for good, but her own pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving on.
So we actually entered into the third arc. My understanding is like when this anime aired, there was a big stop right here, and like it took a while for the anime to come back. And it honestly feels almost like a sequel anime or a epilogue, an OVA ending, because it kind of switches tones a little bit. We do see Zen, who he basically, his boss quits. He has to tell that other boss, like, hey, I'm responsible for your niece's death. And he's like, and the boss is like, hey, that's part of the job. Are you the one who sent her out alone? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So basically, he's done with his job, and he spends time with his family. He takes his family to the zoo, which was something that had been mentioned earlier. His family wanting to do. He gets a gift of 2 eggs, one with like a undeveloped chicken in it, and I don't remember what was in the other one, something clean, but it was said, which one of these is good?
It was such a stupid argument. That's such a stupid argument. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
If you can't tell from the surface without investigation at all, then there's no difference, clearly.
But basically just I antagonizing him. And
you know what? This basically in this moment moves from the micro to the macro.
Yes.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it changes from the city perspective to a world perspective.
Yeah.
Which starts with a news report saying that a city in Canada has now adopted the suicide law as well. And then an FBI agent from America whose name is Samuel Hardy, basically comes and is like, hey, I want your help. And I speak Japanese. He literally says that. I speak Japanese. I want your help. And then we switch over and we meet a character named Alex Wood. And he basically gives us the story of his life, which was that he was a sickly kid and he learned to think a lot. And he's a big thinker. And he's addicted to this MMO. And then he met a girl in the MMO and she ended up being super hot. And she married him. And then, by the way, I absolutely love Alex Wood's wife. Probably, if she was in the story more, probably would have been my favorite character. She was fantastic. Her worldview. She was so cool. And yeah, they have a wife and a kid. And at the same time, we're meeting like the Secretary of State of the United States and the Ministry of Defense, and they're talking about these new laws and how, okay, this is a problem. We need to be careful about America. And then they go and they talk to the president, and it's Alex Wood. The character we made. Basically almost a new main character. The new main character. Yeah. Zen's still in it, but the president is now the main character. And then in the next episode, Hartford, Connecticut has now adopted the suicide law, and so the president talks to the mayor, and he's like, I really wish you hadn't rushed that law. Why did you rush that? But we're not going to interfere. We still haven't decided our position on this, but we could use the military and stop you if we wanted. But I really liked how he's like, we got to be careful about the Constitution, where powers lie. But then he talks to the president of France about a city in France that has done the same thing, and that president's like, yeah, who cares? This is not a problem. We'll just freaking deal with it the way the French do. We just, get it done. He's basically a jerk stereotype leader. And one thing I liked is that none of the political leaders were based on real life political leaders. Like Death Note does that. I've seen George W. Bush show up in animes and stuff, and it was nice that it was just original characters, so there was no issues.
I agree.
Also, what I really liked about the Alex Wood was it seemed like the reason, or like one of the reasons he was elected as president, is his superpower is thinking, and he kind of goes through this whole
in MMOs.
What's that?
Yep. And talking to people in MMOs.
Right. No, but that seems to be his main talking point, is that you think about things until time runs out, but do the best you can with the thought process that you did, and that he's the great thinker.
Yep. No bigger oxymoron than MMO player president of the United States.
I know, that was so funny. He
Okay.
literally, when he's not working, he's at his computer still playing the MMO.
Did you notice his name in the MMO was AWW?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's just his own
because
name.
he always
Aw.
says but it's also his initials.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. The FBI then comes in and briefs him on and Zen is brought in to provide information. And the director of the FBI says, "I want this man to be made a part of the FBI." And the person's like, "Oh, why would you want to do that?" Because he's the only one who really knows what's going on. And also, I think he's kind of dangerous. And the president's like, "Well, I'm not really sure about that. I'll consider it, but we'll use him in the investigation." And then Zen and Matt are sent to Connecticut, to Hartford, to talk to the mayor to see if I has been there. They ask him why he started the suicide law. He gives his reasons. He talks about Mark Twain. And then they do some investigation in his records and find that he went to a hospice house recently. When they investigate there, they find out he received a phone call, and then when they go to that phone call, it's actually I talking to him, and they realize that just that short conversation, she convinced him that the suicide law should be legal.
Also, we haven't gotten to the point where they got the recording. Never mind.
Right. Yeah. What's really, I thought something else was going on here because they hear I's voice on the thing, and then Zen hears I literally talking to him specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if maybe he's not under her influence a little at this point, or if she hasn't already gotten to him and he just doesn't realize it. But it's hard to tell. It was a very awkward.
I think what's happened is probably what happened to the boys from the counseling sessions is that she's invaded his space and his head and not exactly violated him, but has antagonized him enough to keep him basically on a leash and keep him engaged with her because she finds it entertaining. Because it seems as though she, like you said earlier, Troy, she could just make him off himself just like everyone else. But for some reason, this guy, she's absolutely loving torturing.
Yeah.
2 more cities in different countries announced that they will be adopting the law, and Zen realizes that all the cities are in countries that are part of the G7 summit, and they line up perfectly. And so this is definitely planned. And at the same time, Alex is speaking with the Chancellor of Germany, trying to figure out what are they doing, and he's trying to decide where his position is. Should suicide be allowed? He's looked in the Bible. There's nothing specifically about the Bible. He actually goes and talks to a priest, and the priest is like, "Yeah, but it does say not to kill, and that is technically still killing." And they talk about the point of the 10 Commandments. There's actually more religious philosophy in it than I thought there would be. Especially at this point, it kind of had been absent, and then suddenly they start bringing in the Bible, and I thought that was nice. That was a nice to include that as well into the discussion. Zen goes back to the mayor and asks about the phone call. They see a little girl commit suicide. Her mother was in the hospice and had died, and they see her on a bridge, and she's like, "It's okay. The authorities said I could," and she kills herself because her mom is dead. And
because she believes she's going to go see her mom. She wants to go be with her mom. And again, they do a really, really good job of showing just how traumatic watching someone do that is. Like, this is just another example of here's argument for why it should be good, but then here's a shown argument for why it's bad. I think they do a really good job with the contrast.
When they talk to the mayor about the phone call, and he's like, "Yeah, I did take that phone call. I remember that. That is when I decided to make the suicide law." What a coincidence. They find out that he talked to that little girl. And when she asked him about it, or about dying, he was like, he basically gave her the okay to kill herself. And that really pisses off Matt, the FBI agent. Alex's wife gives him like a pep rally speech, and that I absolutely loved. I didn't write down everything she said, but that's when I was like, man, that character is awesome. What a cool wife character. And then Zen has dinner with the president and his wife, and then him and the president have a private discussion. And Alex, the president, says, "Tell me what you think about this, because you are the one who's seen it all." And this is when I kind of realized, like, everything we've been shown about how of all the trauma he's going through seeing this, that's what they're pointing out here, is that there's been a victim to all these events, and it's the people that kept going.
Survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I did appreciate about it, though, is how slow it went with the president coming to some sort of conclusion about this, because up until this point, he even admits quite a few times, I don't know how I feel about this law, and I'm not going to rush to a gut decision. I want to think this through rationally and like come to some sort of philosophical basis for it. And that's one of the reasons he's asking Zen. He's like, Zen, you have firsthand experience with this, and help me understand what I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
Zen also admits, I want to join the FBI so I can get a gun.
I know.
So I can get her.
Like, he just grabs his cojones and goes, here, on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
And the president asks him, like, oh, you just want revenge? He's like, I do just want revenge, but this is bigger than that. She's going to kill so many people. She's a danger to the world. Someone has to stop her. Yeah, I want revenge, but this is also the right thing to do. And so the president does make him an FBI agent, and he's like, but if you do this, you wouldn't be able to go back to your family. So I'm giving you a gun, and I'm ordering you to do the right thing with it and to get back to your family.
Mm-hmm.
You see this moment and like the animation of this. By the way, just real quick, the animation in this particular anime is fantastic. Like, there was budget for this, and you can see in his expression how crushed he is in that moment, and he instantly turns and he's like, yes, sir. And I do that is one thing that Zen has always been able to do, is put duty and what's right above his own personal feelings.
And then Itsuki calls to have his own summit at the same time as the G7 summit, and the G7 summit is obviously going to be about the suicide law that is spreading across the world now that it's in all their countries. And Itsuki invites all the mayors of those cities to come to his city and have a suicide summit. But at this point, Alex realizes his plan. And so the G7 summit starts, and the leaders gather, and at first they're arguing, that they have different opinions. They all go, and Japan's like someone mentioned, I think England mentions going to war. Like, if you take a suicide law, what about war? And Japan's like, whoa, let's not like say war. We all need to calm down. And Japan will do whatever you guys want to do, but we have to decide unanimous what we're going to do.
And then they start bullying Japan over war.
Yeah.
This was your fault,
Yeah.
Yep.
Running away from war again, are we?
Yep.
Yeah. I like how their personalities are part of it too, and like, oh, you're being such a jerk, like you always are, or you just care about the money.
Yep.
But then Alex goes and he's like, guys, I want to discuss something else. Let's discuss good and evil, and if we come to a decision there, maybe we'll find the answer to the suicide question, because it's too far extended from without having a base core value, which is really interesting, because a certain member of this podcast said, I don't like the philosophies they're saying because there's no central core tenets that they're spouting, and then that's literally where a character comes to. You were right.
It pissed me off so bad. I was like, all of this philosophical debate is not rooted in anything. Like, you can't come to a conclusion. Yeah. This was where I started to be like, okay, this is cool. Now where are they going to go with this?
So, it's drawn like they're flying through space and like going through warp fields and stuff. But basically, these leaders talk about good and evil. They go through a lot of different points that honestly, the three of us have brought up when we've discussed philosophy. We do discuss other stuff besides anime. I saw a lot
Weird,
that were
right?
familiar. I'm like, oh wow,
Yep.
we literally talked about it. They also bring up the trolley problem,
Yeah.
which I believe is the second anime we've watched that has the trolley problem. I think
Yeah.
Steins Gate had it.
It's a popular problem.
And then I remember the show The Good Place, which is a comedy about philosophy, also discussed it, and they made a guy actually ride the trolley over people, and they splattered on him. It was hilarious. It was cool seeing that in there. But yeah, they go through a lot of stuff, but never really come to a definition. I really again like that they brought up different cultures' view, you know, religion, politics, all these different points of view of what good and evil is, animals. And I thought I really liked how they were all encompassing, I guess, is all I'm trying to say.
They did make one comparison that didn't make sense. Like, they left out one core attribute of the comparison, which differentiated the 2 points, and that was between the trolley comparison with the surgical, remove all the organs and put them in the unhealthy people, right? They left out one very important aspect of that, which is either way on the trolley, somebody's going to die. Like, it's a futile situation. It's choosing between two necessary evils, right? One of them is going to happen. Whereas with the surgery, they're like, you have a healthy person, which means they're not going to die. So we're going to kill them and take out their organs. And it's the same thing. But it's not the same thing because it's not a futile situation where all parties are going to die.
Well, that's not true, because on the trolley problem, the one person alone on the track would live, just like the healthy person.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though, is like every one of these people have an equal chance of dying. I guess maybe I phrased it incorrectly. No matter which direction the lever is, somebody's going to die. Whereas with the healthy person and the sick people, if you don't touch that situation, then the healthy person lives out their life like normal. If you touch the situation, you are taking the life away. It's not a trolley bearing down and this healthy person is going to die at the same rate as these sick people. It's not like this person's going to be in a car accident tomorrow and you have the choice to take the
point of the illustrations is your action will be the result.
Or inaction. That's part of it.
Well, so then, yeah, because the inaction part brings up a whole other slew of issues, right? Of like Good Samaritan, whatever, right? But the idea is that, are you willing to take an action that will end one person's life to save a majority of people? That's the same in the trolley as it is with the surgery.
I see what you're saying, but it's just, I don't know. There's something different. There's something different about them, and I can't put my finger on it exactly.
Different. They're obviously different scenarios, but
no, beyond that, there's something.
But the boiled down simplification of the two is action by you. Are you willing to take an action to save more lives at the cost of one life?
I think it has to do with the health part. There's something different about it.
Well, and to be fair, the characters in this anime point out this is a different scenario, and they're like, it's almost exactly the same, but you're right, because now you've committed murder, whereas in the other one you didn't, even though you technically took the same action. You technically still chose who gets to live and who gets to die. So you're both right, which is I think the anime does try to say. But
no, I agree with Jeremy that they are a bit different. I'm just saying that the base philosophical language is what they're trying to get at.
Right. And then the story keeps happening, though. Did you guys know the story keeps going?
Wait, there's a story here?
Yeah. Basically, the president almost is like, oh, I got it, it's almost there. And then Itsuki calls basically from his summit and says, hey, president, I need to talk to you. So they pull the president out of the summit. And Itsuki says, there's a woman here at our summit. She's on the top of this building. She doesn't know if she wants to commit suicide or not. She wants to talk to you and have you decide, which puts the president in a really bad situation, and his secretary of defense and talk about this. They're basically saying, if we don't answer, we look like a country who doesn't care if a girl commits suicide. If we do answer and we tell her not to commit suicide. That could be bad. It either makes us take a stance. We have to take a stance right now on this law, and then Zen says that woman could be I. We should not let the president talk to her. He's like, I will translate. And then Matt, the FBI agent, is like, I'll translate. And I love his line. He kind of gives Zen a playful punch. He's like, I didn't want to say it, but your English is terrible, man. You need to go back to school with your son. It was both like a really good jab and then like this really endearing moment. It was like, oh, you're so cool. You're dead, aren't you?
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Actually, I love the anime where he first meets Zen. He's like, "Are you Zen?" And the Japanese voice actor is trying to do an English.
Yep.
Dude, and it's like, you don't sound English.
Yeah.
To be fair, the president of the United States in this is speaking fluent Japanese the entire time.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's for a Japanese audience.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, of course.
So what they basically do is, so Matt will talk to the girl and then interpret back and forth. So the president asks her what her name is and what her story is, and she basically reveals that she had a baby. The father left, and she was left alone with this baby, but she loved her kid, and then he died of SID, sudden infant death syndrome. And she was really depressed and really in despair afterwards, but now that's kind of gone, and there's just, she says, quiet. So basically, there's just no emotion. There's no happiness. There's no sadness.
Which is just more depression. It's just another layer of depression.
Right. Absolutely, it is. And she asked, okay, so what should I do? Should I commit suicide or not? And the president says, you're not going to want to hear this, but I don't know. He's like, I'm really close to figuring it out, but I haven't got there yet. So I'm going to ask you to wait. Don't commit suicide. Let me figure it out. And if suicide is the right answer, I'll commit suicide with you. And she says, wow, that's pretty great. I'll do it. She decides to wait. And so and this has been broadcast, across the world. Everyone's watching this G7 summit, and everyone's cheering for the president, how smart he is. This guy is clearly not a real American president because everyone likes him.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, he said, no one has less friends than the president of the United States. He then sits back and he starts thinking about it. He actually comes to the realization of what is good and evil.
Right, because the waiting part, right? It's like, I can't come to a good decision if it ends.
Mm-hmm. And the philosophy of this anime, of the president, and eventually of even Zen, is good is continuing, evil is ending. And he gets really excited, grabs the phone to tell her, and I's in the phone. And we find out I is actually there at the G7 summit, standing with the interpreters. She's already made them kill all themselves, including Matt. And now she's on the phone, and she does her whisper thing, and the president walks out of the room, super excited to go kill himself.
Yep.
Zen realizes what's going on, and he tells the Secretary of State, and basically, Secret Service members start killing themselves, and they're like, okay, no, you have to find the president, and you have to take out your headsets.
Get off the comms.
Get off the comms.
Yeah.
So some do survive, but yeah, a lot of them are killing themselves. Bullets are flying out of the embassy now as they are shooting themselves. Mm-hmm. The president is running full speed up to the roof, and he makes a comparison to like Adam and Eve biting the apple. You shouldn't bite the apple, but you want to so bad. There's newscopters in the sky. They see the president on the edge of the roof. All the reporters and the Secretary of State are outside. They see the president on the roof. Zen gets up to the roof, and he comes to the president. He's like, you got to stop. And he's like, Zen, I figured it out. I know what good and evil is, but I can't stop myself anymore. She got me. I'm a goner. I need you to do something. And with the world watching, Zen pulls out his gun, and he does the right thing, which is shoot the president and kills him. I then appears behind him. He faces her with the gun. She asks him what good and evil is. He tells her the same thing the president had just said. And we hear bang. She says bang, and then a gun goes off. And no one, by the way, no one can see her. She's like standing in the shadows of the inside of the building. So it just looks like he's pointing a gun at the inside. No, he just looks like an assassin now.
And she's even wearing different clothes and has changed back to her normal form now. She doesn't look like the blonde lady that she looked like when we saw her just a few minutes ago.
And then credits roll. And then we see I get off a bus. And her hat blows off. And Zen's son picks it up and brings it to her. And she says, good boy. And that's the end of the anime.
Oh. God, that broke me. I was like, no. Because as you first see the boy, and I'm like, oh, Dad's going to get off the bus. He did the... Oh, no.
So we have a couple things now to talk about, because I rushed through a lot of that, and I know there's a lot there to discuss. You guys probably want to touch on the philosophies here that have been presented, so I think that's the appropriate time now to do so.
I'll let Jeremy go first, because I'm... Yeah.
Well, very briefly, I just kind of enjoyed that they wound up coming to that conclusion that good equals continuing, because I think that's a pretty nice moral ground that the vast majority of people can agree on. I mean, there are caveats to what that means, as far as continuing at the expense of what, or so I don't know. I guess I would probably put it, my personal opinion, probably be like continuing in harmony as much as possible with everything else. But yeah, it was interesting how he came to those conclusions based on just deciding not to rush to a conclusion was better than rushing to a conclusion. Therefore, taking time to figure things out, like Jason pointed out, was good by definition. But yeah, just in brief, that was my core opinion.
I loved the presentation of their debate and the logical strings that they were following to get there. I 100% disagree with Woodward on a base level, right? Yeah, I think if we were to encapsulate this in the context of life, like if we're talking about just life, continuing life is good, ending life is bad, I could kind of get behind that. Obviously with some caveats. But I mean, ending a murder spree, it's not exactly evil. So it's, I think, but like I said, I really, really enjoyed the philosophical wrestling match that happened between the leaders, and also, like I said, the logical threads he was following and the conclusion that he came to as far as life. I did enjoy that a lot. And then this ending broke me. Like, I like, you see 7, like episode 7, you're just like, oh, that was rough. And then you get to 12 because you want justice to just come hammering down on I so bad. And I've got a guilty pleasure. Every once in a while, I love to see a piece of media where the bad guy basically wins, and this is going to go into that bucket, like right along Arlington Road. Like,
out of curiosity, do you think that Alex would have been okay with her being executed, and that would have still been a good thing?
I don't know about Alex, and specifically in the context of U.S. law, because not all states agree with capital punishment.
Not. I was thinking about
it purely in his philosophical conclusions. Probably would not want to see her executed.
Really? I think he would have.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think he would have, because continuing doesn't necessarily mean, selfishly continuing, or everyone is continuing without any sort of repercussion, but continuing of everything in as much harmony as possible is how I interpreted it. And therefore, if something is very heavily disturbing that, especially for purely chaotic reasons, that's an element that would need to be eliminated. So in order for continuing to happen.
See, and that's the thing, is like they didn't expound upon that. Obviously, there wasn't time in this in this entire
Mhm.
anime to explore that idea,
Mhm.
right?
The thing that I want to interject with is the thing that kept coming back to me is that in this ending of the anime, he shoots the president, and somebody gets shot at the end, and since Ai's not dead,
Got to be
he kill
himself. Yeah.
himself. He killed himself. However, those are two endings that were brought about that were for good.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me back to earlier about Zen, which was I'm doing bad things for a greater good.
Exactly.
Which kind of feels if Alex Wood was trying to get to the most base primal core concept, then if he really found it, I don't think you could say the words with caveats.
I think you could because you're dealing with more than one person. If you have one person existing, then that person doesn't have to deal with the consequences of other people's actions.
That's
But if
why I
you have
believe
to deal with people that are going to do bad, then you may have to do something that is technically not good in order to stop their bad.
so. I that's the thing is I don't think continuing equals good is an absolute that applies to all situations and all things. Like I don't think that's a base moral foundation that he had come to.
Right.
At least that's what I assume. Because
get-
in the context and encapsulation of the suicide law or life,
Mm.
then I'm okay with that conclusion. If it's a base moral foundation, I'm not okay with that conclusion.
I guess for me, my thing is I like it as a conclusion. It's a really nice idea, and I think it's a great idea for a 12 episode show to present. But
100% agree.
I would think
Mm.
like a real philosopher would want to find even more base primal, so that there couldn't be words like caveats. In my
Well,
opinion.
Yeah, I did think that one of the most interesting things that he said during the philosophical considerations was, "Oh, it always existed. We just decided to call it good and evil." And I do agree with that. I think that that makes a lot of sense. That there is a sort of fundamental truth and good and evil as to those things existing. But as far as being able to identify a rule, like how can you? I don't understand how you could actually have a rule that could always be true, even in the presence of those who deliberately force you to break that rule. You know what I mean? Like if you have some element outside of that they're choosing to break that rule, you've now not got a passive situation. It's like a ripple, right? Or harmony in music. If somebody's playing a dissonant note, or if somebody throws a different stone in, it's going to disturb that trajectory. And so it's going to look like it's a lot more confusing than it actually is, but that's because of interference. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think I agree with that. I just don't really have an answer, but that's okay. I do want to bring up another topic, which is your guys' thoughts on the ending, and because it's very open ended. I do have problems that we don't find out about, like what happens with Isekai. Was he in control? Was that really his son? What was up with the pharmacy stuff? It does feel like some loose threads, but one thing I don't have a problem with is the open-endedness of Ai and not knowing about her. I'm actually super into that. I think she's scarier. I think if they were like, hey, she has this mutant power, I'd be like, that's dumb, and the science doesn't check out. But now it's just a fact that she does. You just need to accept that, and that is way better to me. But what are your guys' thoughts on the ending and your interpretation of it?
I absolutely hated it. I absolutely hated it. I thought it would have been much more satisfying after all this buildup. All this buildup. It was like climax was stolen from you. You know?
I think that was the point.
To maintain the sexual metaphor. I guess you could be right. I mean, if they're saying, look, if you take away this suicide ability, it's this is what it would feel like. I don't know. But it just I absolutely hated the fact that she was there at the end with no explanation with his son, which means implication of terrible things have happened to his wife, and that he committed suicide. Well, it's possible. It's like what else is she doing there? She knows it's his son. And we know that she's evil and she enjoys being evil and doing evil things. I mean, when she's decapitating,
there's not a happy ending.
She's like,
regardless.
she's like literally saying, I know this is bad, but I just want to do it. I'm just gonna do it. So I can totally see her pulling some kind of creepy stuff like that on his wife.
Jason, your
But
thoughts?
ugh. No, go ahead.
Yeah. I like I said, I appreciate a good bad guy win ending. But man, did it feel bad. And I think that's one of the reasons I liked it so much is because it was so unsettling. For a thriller where the bad guy not only wins in the end but gets away is something you don't see very often, and it just makes me hate her even more. And I really love that about this character, that she's oh, God, yeah, it just it broke me. And I think that because of that emotional attachment is what you don't get in anime. You don't get in media. Like these characters, some of the most iconic characters that you can think of off the top of your head, it's like Kaiser Sose, for instance. Like that was an emotional roller coaster ride where the bad guy got away. And it was like, that's one of the most iconic things you'll remember in media. And this bad guy I will remember for a long time.
So I'm going to reveal my theory now because I had a little bit of an issue with it, and I've seen a lot of people have issues with this not being satisfying. I totally get that because there are no answers, and like I said, I have my own issues with the ending. But I came up with a headcanon, and it's because 2 episodes, in episode 11, it starts with a description of the Whore of Babylon from the Bible, from the Book of Revelation. Mm-hmm. And I think, in my headcanon, that she is literally a demon, the Whore of Babylon. Yeah. And that is where her powers come from, and that either he shot himself or he shot her. Either way, it doesn't matter because she can't lose, she can't die, and that what we're actually watching is the beginning of the apocalypse, and a good man standing in its way. And there's movies that have done this. There's Fallen with Denzel Washington. There's Devil's Advocate with everyone's favorite Keanu Reeves, where basically in the end they decide to get in the way of the devil and they sacrifice themselves and they slow down their plans. But the devil's like, meh, like, oh, if you extended my plan a month, a year, humanity will always humanity. And I really like the idea of this evil demon bringing an end to humanity, not with disease or explosions, but just making us not want to be here anymore. And that's a really creepy, and so that makes the ending really satisfying because by shooting the president, if he had committed suicide, it would have affirmed that suicide is okay. Right. Everyone would have thought that he was telling the girl to commit suicide. By shooting him, he got in the way of the only way he could. And even if he shot himself, that actually goes against the suicide law because this evil villain escaped justice thanks to a suicide law, or thanks to suicide. So that makes suicide bad. Or if he shot her, then he slowed her down. But at the end of the day, the apocalypse is coming.
Yeah. And
so when I kind of decided that for myself, it made me really satisfied with the ending. It's sad and creepy, but that's kind of what I was looking for.
I came to that same conclusion with Wood, where he's trying to explain to Zen how he's feeling, and you can see it in his eyes the way it's drawn. And again, the animation in this anime is so beautiful. He's expressing to him, shoot me, because I don't want to jump for this girl, but I can't stop myself from jumping. Please shoot me. And like when he gets hit, the smile and relief on his face is enormous, and it's like, that is so sad.
Yeah.
But I like that theory, Troy, that she's not human. She's the harbinger of the apocalypse.
She's literally inevitable, but good. One good person could slow her down a little bit. All right, we need to move to final reviews. Jason, what do you think?
I said this in our earlier. This is going to be one of the best animes for me that I cannot recommend to people. I would give this a 4 for me personally, and I'd probably give it a 2 for someone asking me for an anime pick. And so I will stick with the 4 because of how much of a ride this was. But like I would have to give disclaimer after disclaimer if I was recommending it to somebody, like do not watch it if ABC, and only watch it if you're up for ABC. But if you are up for those things, this was a fantastic ride.
If you like Silence of the Lambs with an anime twist, you're probably good.
Right.
All right, Jeremy, how about you?
It was okay. It was interesting. I'll definitely admit that when I finished watching it, like I definitely went through phases. In the first half of it, I was mildly intrigued, but also bored until it started to pick up, and then I kind of liked it. But then at episode 7, I was like, I'm done. I hate this anime. I am absolutely done with this. But I had to finish, and by the end, it was okay. I was happy that they came to the conclusion they did when they had their philosophical discussion. But it wasn't anything spectacular to me, and I was very frustrated with the ending. But then I went online to see if actually that was his son, because I wasn't sure. And I found somebody's review where they actually talked about how they've struggled with depression and a desire to commit suicide. They watched this anime, and it actually changed their perspective on the topic and made them not want to anymore. And that's really cool. That's really, really cool that this anime would actually have that kind of sticking potential, even if it's just one person that reacts that way. But I imagine that there's others too. So for that, I kind of appreciate it a little bit. I hadn't thought of it in that light, that it would be so striking to some people. But I think for my personal enjoyment, I would have to give it like a just barely a 3. Just barely a 3. So I'm almost like right there, Jason, at that 2 level where
Right.
yeah, just barely a 3. But I think it could definitely be a 4 for some people. I could totally see how it could. Not just for Jasons of the world, but also for people that are maybe struggling and need to have a different perspective.
I think there's really awesome idea here, a really good concept. It was bland in the first episode, but then the twist started coming in the second episode. Then it got bland again. Then it got really violent and crazy, but then it went into a weird third act with a lot of philosophy. It's kind of all over the place, so I'm giving it a 3, but it's probably my favorite 3 anime we've seen ever.
Top of the 3s.
I don't want to watch it again. It's given me nightmares. It's in my head. I've been thinking about it so much, and I gotta respect that it presented something that could do that to me, even if it wasn't enjoyment all the way through. Because you consume media and content to feel something, but I've been terrified. I literally woke up with my alarm clock blaring, thinking it meant someone committed suicide, and that was how I woke up one morning. It was so, it got to me. All right.
No, the
Let's
best
move
way
on.
I think you described it was it's dense. It is so dense.
It's very dense.
Yeah, it's dense.
Okay. Our next anime is going to be Fire Force, which also has religion in it, but I think it's going to be a much more lighter topic. It's a shonen about priests and firefighters who battle fire demons using fire powers. It's like just fire everywhere, but the fire is like
fire with fire.
Beautiful animated. So we're going to be checking that out. And if you have any thoughts on this anime or any other anime, you can reach us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast or email the animebakaclub@gmail.com or leave a comment wherever you found this podcast and we will respond to it. Thank you all for listening, and we hope this anime did not give you nightmares because I picked it and I'd feel bad. All right, let's say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
But what is justice?
Sayonara.